He was the kind of dad that most kids love to have. He was strong, he was fun. He had our names tattooed on his arm. That was so cool. When we were young, I remember everybody would say, "Daddy's home," and all of us would actually kind of scurry to him, and whoever got there first got to take off his boots. Once you got him off, he would say something like, "Good job, thank you." And I'll be honest with you, that meant everything. That meant everything. My name is Vince Brown. My family and I have been attending New Hope Oahu for 22 years.
My name is Kyle Lum. I am a staff pastor here at New Hope Oahu. I oversee our operations department, and I also oversee our midweek services on Wednesday evenings. I was raised in an irreligious family. My dad had been in churches as a youngster and had not been part of a church, and my mom was never really acquainted with the Christian faith. When I was 9 years old, my dad left us. He decided to kind of go off on his own, and being 9 years old and seeing my dad leave, I thought it was my fault, not understanding how broken families work.
My father was actually wounded in the Korean War. He was left for dead. He had been shot in the arm, and it actually penetrated his abdomen. So after he was going through a bunch of surgeries, he was actually discharged for the Army, and actually that's where trouble started. About that time, I was in intermediate school. My dad came home about midday. He pushed my mom, I pushed him, and life changed. The next day, my mom loaded us up, put us in a car, and I didn't see my dad for 15 years after that. I think that running to my dad to the point where I was running from my dad changed everything. How was that guy who I basically idolized terrorizing me and my family? I didn't understand it at all. I said, "I hate that guy. I hate that guy." God says, "You don't hate your dad." I said, "Yeah, I hate him." He said, "No, you don't hate him. You hate what he's done, but you love your dad." I said, "Yeah, I do." During that 15 years, I became just like my dad. I remember coming home one day, and the kids would come and say, "Daddy's home," and they come running and help me take off my boots, and I would tell them the same thing my dad told me. "I appreciate you, thank you." And one time I came home, and nobody came to the door. And then it all came back. Maybe they weren't running to me anymore, maybe they were running from me.
It wasn't until my dad returned to the house to care for his ailing father, my grandfather, that we began to reestablish our relationship again. We had sort of an off and on relationship through those years until 2014, when my dad began to show signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, and it was showing no signs of getting any better. In the process of caregiving my dad and his memory beginning to fade away, I was his primary point of contact, and our relationship began to grow to the point where I was almost parenting my dad. I was almost the one who had to make the decisions for him and with him regarding his health and his welfare. And in that process, I began to forgive him for some of the hurt that has happened in the past.
God started to work in his life. God started to work in my life, started working in my mom's life. And about that time, God said, "Forgive your dad." I said, "Lord, I can't do that. I can't forget seeing him hit my mom. It's something I'm not going to be able to forget." He said, "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to forgive." I realized after time that God just wanted me to take that step of forgiveness, and he would help me, in fact, with the forgetting part, and he did.
Having had a not so great relationship with my dad through my formative years, probably the greatest lesson that I've learned, and I'm still learning, is that one of the most important things that you could give to your children is not stuff, and it's not money, it's time.
I never want to just put them on remote control, because sometimes I found myself so busy, with my job, being here in Hawaii prices so high. You know, you had to kind of like almost work around the clock just to make it. And sometimes you take your eye off the ball.
A couple of weeks ago at the Mother's Day services, Pastor Mary talked about a thing called bonus moms. And I believe there are also bonus dads also, where you can invest your time and your heart to someone who may not have a father. In my life, I have a couple of bonus dads. They were my mentors. They were my overseers. They were my support and my friends. You know, many of them have gone on to be with the Lord Jesus, but there are a few who are still living today.
For dads out there who are charged with being that dad that their kids look to, I would just say, never stop. Absolutely never stop having hope in your children. Never stop encouraging them, and never stop praying for them. In fact, no matter how small they are, ask them to pray for you. It's so important. There's nothing that warms your heart more than your son or your daughter praying for you.
No matter whether you are a father by birth or a bonus dad, put Jesus at the center of that relationship.
And at the same time, make sure they understand that you're not perfect. And they do have a father that they can go to who is perfect. And his name is Jesus.